live, I want to say welcome back because I know I've interviewed twice before. One time was when we were going to well, it was when you were at WLS in Chicago.
Okay.
And then the second time was at WCBS in New York. And now you're on the other side of the galaxy in California where the weather's probably nice because here we have minus here in Chicago.
Yeah, no, I hate to tell you, but here in San Francisco, it's actually a beautiful day. And I'm sorry for the people in Chicago and the East and the South that have all this horrible weather. I've lived through it and uh, it's tough. Makes for a good news story, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I just hope everybody is safe.
Oh yeah, I don't see many people. I live downtown where usually there are a lot of people outside and there aren't many people outside today. But all right, so now I just want an update. You spent many years at WLS. Can you just like go over how many years you're at WLS and in New York, et cetera?
Sure. I started at WLS in 1993. I was Don and Roma's traffic anchor, and I also was a fill in news anchor for Jeff Hendricks and the late Jim Johnson, and got a lot of time filling in for both of them. Eventually, Jeff retired, and I moved into more of a full time spot. I had the title news director, and I anchored the mornings with Don and Roma. I left WLS in 2006 when WCBS in New York called. I went to WCBS and anchored Afternoon Drive for 18 years. With during the pandemic, there was a 15-month period where, due to some illnesses on the staff and other stuff, I did morning drive. But other than that, I was afternoons, and I was with WCBS until the company made a business decision to take the station off the air in August of 2024. And I'm very fortunate to have been picked up by KCBS here in San Francisco. Same company, so Odyssey apparently didn't have anything against me personally. Um, and I'm now the morning anchor here at KCBS in San Francisco, and loving living out here. I mean, I'm originally from California, Central California. I went to San Jose State, which is just down the road from San Francisco. So it's kind of a full circle thing, and it's great to be out here doing mornings on KCBS. And I'm also the public address announcer for the Golden State Warriors basketball team. So I've got a couple of things going on.
Yeah, what was that like to be at a station in New York? And actually, I just want to remind people that you can go to podcast.radiogirl.us and you can see the interview I did with you in 2012 when you were actually in New York, but we talked about WLS. And then I interviewed you during the pandemic. Wow, it's towards the beginning of the pandemic. It was May of 2020.
Wow,
And yeah,
that
because I
seems
remember
like a
you talk.
whole. That seems like a century ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I remember you were talking about all the trucks that you saw with the people who had passed away from COVID and
Yeah.
my gosh, what a different time. But what was it like to be at the station for so long and then to find out that you weren't going to work there anymore?
Well, it was heartbreaking. We didn't see that coming. Um, but, Odyssey had two news stations in New York City, WCBS and 1010 Wins, which continues and is the dominant station there and is doing very, very well. And the company just made a decision that they didn't need two news stations in New York anymore, and made the business decision. Nothing personally. It wasn't performance related for anybody on our staff. That they decided to shut down the station. It was hard. I mean, I was there 18 years, but there were people there. A couple of our weather people had been there over 40 years. My colleague Wayne Cabot, with whom I anchored in the afternoons for years, had been there 36 years. Other people had been there over 20. So, I mean, it had been a huge part of our lives for so long that it was really hard to get the news. I think in our heads, we understood the business decision. I can't disagree with the business decision that Odyssey made at the time. It was, I think, a prudent, smart decision. But in our hearts, it hurt quite a bit to see William S. Paley's baby, WCBS, go away. And so, a lot of us kind of scattered. I think I'm the only one who's really left the area to find full time work. Um, but it was difficult. But as they say, one door closes, another one opens, and now I'm at KCBS, which is a wildly successful station. Does great in the ratings, does well with revenue, and I'm anchoring Morning Drive. I work with a great crew. You can't beat the weather in San Francisco. I'm working for the Warriors, and so it was devastating at the time, but in the end, after a lot of angst, passing, it worked out okay.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that I'm just gonna say this publicly because I did say this to you behind the scenes, but I forgot when it was, but somebody gave me some vague information that they were maybe gonna cut WCBS. And I remember I told you either I told you verbally, or I told you an email, and I said, "Have you heard anything about WCBS closing?" You're like, "No," because you were right there in the main area, and then fast forward it happened. So I don't know.
Yeah, we
I
didn't
forgot.
know as a staff, we didn't know until we were called into a conference room um, in mid August. I don't know what the date was, but I should remember August 12th, maybe. They just called us all into the conference room. And, one of the bosses had to deliver the difficult news. Uh, a deal had just been cut for the station to be leased out by another company. I think it had been cut just the weekend before when we were called in on a Monday. And so nobody knew. And, it was kind of a shock. They gave us 2 weeks to say goodbye and tell stories on the air, and which was great. And again, it showed the confidence and respect that they had for our team. I think that they let us stick around for 2 weeks. And there was, a couple of little reunions where people from the past came in. So a lot of great memories were shared. But then the station ceased to exist as WCBS. There is no longer a WCBS radio. And that frequency now carries sports. They carry the Mets during baseball season. So, but like I said, a door closes, another one opens, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that's really great because it is true in life that when a door closes, another one opens. Now, the issue is that some doors close professionally for some radio people or TV people, and then another one doesn't open. I mean, did you think another one was going to open?
Gosh, Margaret, I didn't know. I didn't know. You've been around the business long enough. I mean, I'm a news person by trade, and fewer and fewer stations are doing news. I mean, I'm old enough, and you may be as well, to remember when even FM stations had news departments. There in Chicago, WXRT back in the day just had a really good news department. I mean, they were as good as any of the AM stations around. But it's just not like that anymore. And there are fewer and fewer jobs. And I didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, I know a lot of people in the business. I had a lot of really great conversations with people, but in these financial times, they couldn't just poof invent money to bring somebody in just because they like me or think I did a good job. And I ended up having to go 3,000 miles from New York to San Francisco to get a job. So believe me, it crossed my mind. Is this the end? I kind of told myself this is not how I want it to end. It's kind of like an athlete who is, getting up there and then they have a bad injury, and it's like, well, maybe I just fade off into the sunset. But the athlete says, no, this is not how I want to go out. Well, no, this wasn't how I wanted to go out either. And so, believe me, I'm really fortunate that things worked out the way they did, and that I'm with such a great group of people, great bosses, great local management at KCBS.
Yeah, and so how long did it take you between finding out about your job situation in New York and going to California?
It was about 3 months
Not
because we found
bad.
out in August that WCBS was going away. And I started at KCBS on November 26th of 2024. So it was, just a tad over 3 months. I mean, I knew a couple weeks before that. So, about 3 months. That was 3 months of not knowing, not knowing what the future was going to bring. Would I have to leave the business, look for something else to do, which I don't know what that something else would have been. But yeah, it was a really difficult time. And I know my colleagues at WCBS went through the same thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, 3 months is incredible because sometimes when people lose jobs, it takes 6 months to maybe a year or two to find
Yeah.
something.
I mean, I'm fortunate that I already knew the boss at KCBS. We've known each other for years. And, she was happy to add me to the team. We just had to work out, where I was going to stay out here. I'm fortunate that my brother lives in the Bay Area. We stayed with them for a while until we found a home here in San Francisco. So, I mean, it was difficult, but things fell into place. You're absolutely right. There are some people who worked at WCBS who, as far as I know, have not found new jobs in broadcast journalism yet. So, difficult but fortunate.
Hmm. So, what's it like to be back in California? And I do want to say the last time I interviewed you, in 2020, the news was that you got your degree
Oh
40
yeah,
years after you started college. That was
yeah,
breaking news back then. San Jose State.
right, right. Yeah, I started at San Jose State as a 17-year-old freshman, just like everybody else, and that was in the fall of 1979. And yeah, I wasn't necessarily the greatest student. I was really more interested in being on the radio. And I got some radio jobs part time. And finally, I had an offer for a full time radio news job. And I was like, oh boy, this is what I've been studying for. I'm going to take this. And I said, I'm a senior at San Jose State. I'll find time to finish. Well, it took me nearly 40 years to finish. I finally, yeah, I'm class of 2020. So overall, it took me 41 years to get my degree, and I'm still pretty proud of that. That's one of the prouder things in my personal life. It's certainly on the list because it's not something that I necessarily needed. I mean, it hasn't made me any richer or better looking, being a college graduate, but it was something that was left unfinished. And I was really thrilled and really almost emotionally overcome when I finally got it done and had that diploma.
Yeah, and it just goes to show it's never too late and people should finish what they start. I mean, you finished what you started.
Yeah, I mean, you're it's something that I had thought about and dreamed about a lot, and I kind of coined a phrase. I don't know if anybody else ever said it before. I can't say it's 100% original, but basically, your dreams have no shelf life. You can dream about something and think it may never happen, but those dreams never expire. And sometimes they're maybe front of mind. For me, over many of those 40 years, they were kind of back of mind because I was busy doing other stuff, establishing my career, getting married, moving from the Bay Area to Chicago, from Chicago to New York. But then, they're always somewhere back there in the back of your mind. And, it's never too late to finish what you start.
Yeah. So what was it like to go back to California after growing up there? Seriously, like when did you leave California? How old were you? How many years had passed and then when you went back?
Well, I left to go to Chicago, left San Jose to go to Chicago in 1986. So, I mean, it was almost 40 years, I guess 38 and change from the time I had left. Now, I'd been back to visit and things like that with family out here, but living out here was something different, and working out here, it had been almost 40 years. It's been great to come back. I mean, I did have the advantage over somebody else who might have come from New York to take a job here, and that I did grow up here, and I know the Bay Area, and I know California and Central California, and I know who some of the players are in politics and things like that, and I know how to pronounce some of the names or whatever of towns or streets. That helped a lot. But it's such a lifestyle change. It's much more laid back here. It's not as crowded. In New York, when you're walking down the streets in Times Square, people are bumping into you, and you kind of have that angry fast walk as you're walking down Broadway and all that, and you kind of make fun of the tourists. Quit looking up, get out of my way, I'm coming through here. Now here, it's just I walk down the streets. If I get to an intersection and it says don't walk, I'll look both ways and there's no cars coming. I don't walk. I wait until the walk sign comes on. which people in New York would think, are you crazy? People are going to push you out in the street if you don't, go the first chance you get. It's just, it's much more laid back. And then of course the weather, um, I know as we're having this conversation now, the Midwest, the Northeast, even deep down into the South is having just some horrible winter weather. And it's great here. We get some rainy periods sometimes in December and January. But other than that, really from like, I don't know, March through October, it's just beautiful here. And I live in the city of San Francisco, so it's never too hot. It's never too cold. We don't even have air conditioning in our apartment. We just open some windows and to let a nice breeze in. So there's been that kind of change. It's just relaxing. I think it's healthier in many ways, and you're not uptight, and just part of being in California. I think you maybe eat better sometimes. So it's been great to come back. I've gotten reacquainted with people with whom I went to school, and some people I'd actually worked with in broadcasting decades and decades before. We're working again at the same station at KCBS, and just catching up with friends and being near family, being near my brother, other relatives. It's been great.
I thought that at least it used to be, isn't jaywalking illegal in California?
I don't know because nobody really does it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it
Okay.
is,
It
but no,
was
I
at
guess
one point.
like I said, I've become someone I used to mock when I was in New York or even in Chicago, where the sidewalks are crowded and it's like no cars. Okay, I'm going to dash across the street. Maybe it's in the middle of the intersection. Maybe it's at a crosswalk. Here, I just I'm not in a hurry. I just sit and wait. It's like, oh, walk sign. Okay, I'll go now. So it's much more relaxed. Everything is laid back. Maybe the weather has something to do with it. We don't have blizzards or 100 degrees and 90% humidity wearing us down or things like that. I mean, there's the occasional earthquake. There is that, but um, it's a lot less stressful.
Well, have you been to San Jose?
Since I've been back, yeah, I've been down to San Jose a
Okay.
couple times. It's about, I don't know, 45 miles or so down the freeway. I've actually been back to San Jose State um, and visited there. Caught up with some friends of mine who used to be athletes back in the day at San Jose State. I'm going to be back there in March. I've been invited to MC the Distinguished Alumni Induction Ceremonies. They have awards to distinguished alumni, and the nice people at San Jose State have asked me to come back and be an MC and host that event. So I'm looking forward to that. So I've been down there a few times. San Jose has changed a lot. I mean, I'd been back there a couple times in the 40 years since I left. It's changed a lot. San Jose is a larger city population wise than San Francisco. And it has really grown a lot. Silicon Valley, of course, didn't exist or was maybe just starting to exist when I left in the 1980s. And now it's a dominant industry. So, yeah, it's great to go down there and see people. And a lot has changed. Some is still the same, but, a lot has changed. It's grown up a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you how it changed because I went there maybe 20 years ago. I haven't been to Northern California in several years, and I went to San Jose when, of course, the industry was taking off. But then I looked at old pictures of San Jose that it was like a fishing village, and then
Well, that goes way back, I think. Yeah.
right. But then even in the 90s or okay, 80s and 90s, people started buying houses there, and then it started not becoming as affordable, and it was like a tech center. But how has San Jose changed? Because you said it did change.
Uh, I mean, it's been gentrified quite a bit. San Jose State is in the downtown area, and it's completely landlocked by streets to the north, the south, the east, and the west of the campus. And when I was there in the very late 70s into the 80s, that area, when you got off campus, I mean, it wasn't a bad area. You didn't feel like your life was in danger. It just wasn't nicely developed. Well, now it is. The corner where the liquor store was, where my fraternity would buy its kegs, is now some huge apartment development with retail on the ground floor and all that stuff. Um, and there are hotels around there because it's become a very busy conference area. You didn't need hotels back in the day because if people were coming to the Bay Area right away, they'd think, oh, San Francisco. They didn't think much about, well, I'm going to need a hotel in San Jose, but that's different now with it being, really the high tech capital of the world. So it's changed a lot, and for the better. San Jose has a dynamic mayor right now named Matt Mahan, who I know, and I've talked with him on the air a lot. I've talked with him in person a lot. He's a good guy. He's a young guy and has a lot of good ideas. Just like San Francisco has a great young mayor. I guess everybody's young compared to me, named Daniel Lurie. He's a fantastic mayor. I think he's really making good things happen in San Francisco. So things have changed, I think, for the most part, for the better.
Okay, that's good. Now, I was gonna say that the images I get of San Francisco and the stories I hear, I haven't been, like I said, I haven't been there in many years, are maybe more controversial, like
Yeah.
homelessness, etc. Now, I know that Chicago gets a bad rap if people focus on certain things. Can you just tell me the situation in San Francisco?
Sure. I mean, first of all, San Francisco was really badly affected by the pandemic. Um, People stopped coming to the office like they did elsewhere. But this being a tech capital, it was quickly figured out that, oh, we don't need to go back. I mean, we can work remotely, probably more seamlessly than just about anywhere else in the country, because it's, these are tech people who know how to do that kind of thing. And so the downtown area really suffered. Market Street, the main drag through the downtown area, had storefront after storefront close up. Um, Homelessness is an issue. It certainly is in San Francisco. Um, and there's no easy answer to that. Um, the mayor is trying to work on that. The city actually has a policy that if you are from, say, you're from Chicago, you somehow ended up in San Francisco, and you're unhoused, you don't have a home. The city will actually pay for you if you have relatives back in Chicago or wherever. Will pay for you to leave. And some people take advantage of that, others don't. There are homeless on the streets. There's no denying that, just like there are in other big cities. And there is one part of town known as the Tenderloin, where, especially at night, you could see some, a lot of poverty, a lot of homelessness, people who basically live on the sidewalk. And in some cases, there are some open air drug markets. Mayor Lurie is addressing that. They're working on it. You can't just go through with a bulldozer or a giant broom and sweep everybody out of there, because then where do they go? What do you do? So it's not as easy as that, but they are working on it. I will say that I have felt since I arrived here, and it's been over a year now, probably 14 months since I arrived here. I think I arrived back here where San Francisco is on an upswing. I think there's a wave building. And I think we hit it at a good time with, times are getting better. People are coming back to the office in many cases. Some of those empty storefronts are being repurposed for other things. A dynamic mayor who is working to try to fix the problems with homelessness and the occasional open air drug market, things like that. I mean, San Francisco got a bad rap a few years ago. There was a highly publicized fatal stabbing of a tech entrepreneur, the founder of Cash App, a guy by the name of Bob Lee. And he was stabbed to death. Part of the crime was even caught on surveillance cameras. And that played on every television station across the country. It played on the internet over and over and over. And people who don't like San Francisco, maybe for its politics, pointed to it and said, look at this, just some random killing of a tech millionaire on the streets. That wasn't the case. Bob Lee was actually killed by someone he knew. It was a personal thing, had to do with the sister of one, it was a family dispute. And, so it was still tragic. It was still horrible that he was stabbed to death out on the street. He was a young, brilliant tech entrepreneur, but it wasn't just somebody walking down the street who happened to be attacked and killed. This one had family roots to it. And oddly, that part of the story never followed the video that, or the stories that just showed tech millionaire killed on San Francisco street. Um, I'm in the media. I know that follow-up stories sometimes don't get the attention they should, especially when they could change the narrative a little bit. It's easier to do the first story, and then we see something shiny and we move on to the next story. It's sometimes it's hard to go back and say, okay, here's what we've learned about the murder of Bob Lee. It was not a random thing where he was just killed by a crazy man on the street. Here's a little context into what happened. Um, the crime rate in San Francisco has dropped precipitously in the last couple of years. It's at historic lows. It's following a trend really across a lot of the country. I don't know about Chicago, but I know in other big cities we're seeing the crime rate, the homicide rate go down after it really spiked during the pandemic. It's coming down. It's getting better. It can still get better, we hope. But again, sometimes you see a headline or you think you know the entire story and you don't. And that, the murder of Bob Lee, the Cash App founder, was one example of that, where it was a horrendous crime and the whole world saw it played over and over and over and over, but without the context that later followed.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because crime, not crime sells, but I know that various, okay, for instance, for Chicago, I know that there are various places that have their own little column, Chicago crime, and they get
Yeah.
lots of clicks, etc. And I know that drama sells as well. There's a protagonist, antagonist, etc. But why doesn't well, first of all, what do you think about the perception of that? And also, how come there are no follow-up stories about these kinds of things?
Yeah. Uh, first of all, like I said, it's easier to do the first big story, and then something else big comes along that grabs your attention, and it's harder to go back and do it again because your attention is focused somewhere else. Locally, here at my station, KCBS, and the San Francisco Chronicle, and the TV stations, of course, they did the follow-ups and reported, hey, we've learned more about what happened here. It's not what the world first thought. But the rest of the world has moved on. They had their dramatic pictures of a tech millionaire being stabbed to death on the street. They had that, but they've long since moved on. And they're not so interested in going back and rehashing. Part of that could be that news organizations have fewer people than they did once upon a time. And the few people that they have, you're looking at the current and the future. You're not looking back maybe quite as much. Um, you know, that isn't a great excuse, but it might be an explanation. Um, but it's unfortunate. I'm sure every city or town in America has some sort of something that happened where we all saw it on TV, or we saw it on the internet, or we heard about it in the radio, or read about it in a publication, where we're like, oh wow, that is horrible. And then again, we see something shiny and we forget about it. While in that town or that city, they've learned, okay, there's more to it than what we thought. Here's what actually happened. But the rest of us, you know, we don't know that because we've long since moved on to something else. So I don't I don't know how you change that unless somebody, can infuse a lot more money and people into journalism. And unfortunately, these days, that's not happening too much.
Well, I think you're right in that area because if they had money to hire more people, they could assign somebody as a follow-up
Mm-hmm.
reporter. And then they can do stories and they can do stories on the air digitally and they could even go on some shows and they can
Right.
also contact the national media and do follow-up. So I think there is a point there because
Yeah,
people are so
it's
used to covering.
we're all trying to do more with less these days. Newsrooms are much smaller than they used to be. There are fewer people. I'm fortunate at my station. When I left today, got up and left the seat where my workstation is, somebody was actually kind of waiting to hop right into my chair. I mean, we have a nice full newsroom where people are like, "You almost done with that chair?" So but it's not like that everywhere, and everybody's trying to do, like I said, more with less. And it is harder to go back and research and follow up on stories. It's really much easier to tell today's hot news story, and then tomorrow's hot news story, and then the next day's hot news story.
You mentioned earlier about, I want to ask more about San Francisco because you mentioned earlier pay to leave. They pay people to leave. Do you know when that started?
It's been around for a few years. I don't think it's been real successful. In fact, we just had a story today. It came to mind because we had a news story today about it, how the mayor is trying to, up that and make it more attractive. I think something like 18% of the people who are given a bus ticket out of town, 18% end up back homeless on the streets of San Francisco. Now, that means that 82% are somewhere else. But the idea is to reduce homelessness as much as you can, and advocates would tell you if there's one unhoused person, that's one too many. But this program's been going on for a while, a few years, 2 or 3 years. But Mayor Lurie is trying to pump new life into it. I think it's, first of all, there are people who are unhoused who, if they had a close relationship with family members elsewhere, they might not be unhoused. Or if they had family elsewhere, they might not be homeless. So if you say, do you have somewhere you can go? Well, I have a brother in Omaha, but we really don't talk. Or, yeah, I have a cousin in Philly, but, they really don't talk to me too much. They're going to be less likely to want to do that. So, it's a work in progress. Nothing is perfect. But if you can reunite someone who is hit on rough times in San Francisco and send them back where they can be loved, and maybe work on improving their lives and pulling themselves up with a nurturing and loving environment around them with some family, obviously that would be much better than somebody who is just living on the streets and is all alone.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say before we move on, Bart Shore, who you know, of course, from Chicago radio,
Mm-hmm.
he says, "Great to see you both." He says that
Oh,
on Facebook.
hello, Bart. Great talent,
And yeah,
multi-talented. There's a guy who, I first came across Bart Shore. He was on an old overnight truckers radio network. I remember that truckers would tune to a network of stations across the country that was specifically geared toward truckers. And I was working at Shadow Traffic at the time, and Bart was one of the on-air people there. And great talent. And then, of course, he has this great career at WBBM doing traffic reports at WBBM, and now he's moved off somewhere else where he's working in radio again. So, hey, Bart, mad respect. There's a guy who, talk about a survivor and a guy who knows his stuff. That's a guy
yeah,
there.
he has a great voice. He says hi back, and he also said the trucker show is at WGN.
Was it WGN? Okay.
Yeah.
All I know is I worked for Shadow at the time, and we would do some quick news inserts at Shadow and weather, although it's hard to do weather for the entire country. But they were mainly just news inserts that they would put in there in their network kind of syndicated programming to all these stations. And the truckers, I heard that a trucker could get on Interstate 80 here in Oakland, California, and they could keep listening to the program and going from station and state to station all the way across until they got to the George Washington Bridge from New Jersey into New York. So, those kind of things, we don't have too much of those anymore. A lot of that innovation has been budgeted out, I suppose.
Yeah, and also they have online. But what do
Well,
you,
there is
speaking of,
that.
yeah, and well, actually, speaking of online, and then Bart Shore said Fred Sanders had the trucker show.
Fred Sanders. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Now speaking of online, what do you think of the people who are sort of filling the gaps with doing independent journalism? And you've probably seen all this is, I mean, this is where these videos come from. Like, oh, here's a video of this crime, here's a video of the situation in such and such city. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think citizen journalism certainly has a place. People who are just out and about with their iPhone and they suddenly see something going on and they start recording it. It can help bring justice to a situation. I like it even more when their name and their accountability is attached to it. What I don't like as much is, you go on X or other sites and there's people with made up names. I'm not smart enough to know if they're human or a bot. I have no idea, that say totally ridiculous things, but then somebody repost it and repost. We used to say retweet. I don't know what you call it now that it's X. Repost and repost and repost and repost. And all of a sudden, like a million people believe that a cow jumped over the moon yesterday, when in fact it never happened. But oh, yes, it did, because I saw it online and all these people, they retweet it. That to me, as if you want to call me an old school or journalist or whatever, that's really frustrating. I believe in accountability and facts matter. And, if I'm going to do something on the air or online, because I go on social media sites too, my name is always attached. It's never anonymous. And then if I get something wrong, whether it's on the radio or if I post something that might be wrong, you own it. You say, you know what, I screwed up. I got some bad info here. Sorry about that. And I think people understand if you make a mistake, whether it's on the radio or TV or with a post on social media, or writing on a blog, and you make an error. If you come back and say, you know what, I want to correct something that I had earlier. I made a mistake. Here is what I actually should have said. I think people respect that, because we all, nobody's perfect. We all have a slip of the tongue, or, maybe we get information that we were pretty sure was right, but as it turns out, it's not. Or, maybe you just say something wrong. Maybe as you're typing out a script, instead of not guilty, you forget to write not, and it comes out guilty. I mean, it happens. Just own it. Come back and say, you know what, I want to correct this. I made a mistake. Here's what I should have said. I think people respect that a lot. I think it helps with your credibility. But all these bots that answer to no one, to me, that's frustrating. Again, I'm an old dog. I understand it's a world full of new tricks, but that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, and that's Twitter X, but also, I mean, it's very intense on TikTok because even TikTok is so high volume and people will take stuff from TikTok and post it elsewhere. They'll repurpose
Right?
it. So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty, but it's only for a certain kind of group. So, I mean, of course, each social media platform caters to a certain kind of group.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Unless you know the person who is posting it, like if somebody knows of me, they know who Steve Scott is. They know what he does. That I anchor the news on KCBS. Hopefully, they know that if I post something on a social media site, to the best of my knowledge, it's accurate. Like I said, if I make a mistake, you own it. You come back and say, I made a mistake. Here's what I should have said. Um, I think when you see something posted and you recognize the person who posted it and you trust them, it's okay. But I would unfortunately say the vast majority of social media posts today, especially when you look at X, I think the bad unfortunately outnumbers the good by a whole bunch.
yeah, I was going to say that there has been a lot of content on Twitter X. I know I say slash, I don't know why, because there are a
Yeah,
lot of other
no,
things called X. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff on there about San Francisco. And I was going to ask you about the crime because, like I said, I come from a city that's people are really into the crime level. And I'm just wondering if the stuff we see about San Francisco is like just one area. Like, for instance, you know, um, looting or stores pulling out because of the crime. I mean, is that really a thing? What's going on there?
looting, I'm not aware of. I mean, there are occasional smash and grab robberies at stores. You see that in cities all over the country. It's not just San Francisco, where a gang of people will go into a store. Maybe it's a jewelry store, and they just overwhelm the staff there, and they've got sledgehammers, and they bust up the display cases and run out the door before anybody even realizes what happened. Or you see it at just common retail stores too, where a gang will come in and they're like a flash mob. They come in so fast you don't know what to think, and they're already back out the door. I don't see San Francisco having more of a problem with that than anywhere else. Um, as far as stores pulling out, they absolutely did during the pandemic because people stayed home, and all these stores that relied, we're talking lunch counters and parking garages. Even people weren't driving to work. Nobody was parking in the parking garages. Retail stores where maybe you would, I don't know, go after work to buy a sweater or something like that. There was nobody in the city, and so they had no choice. They had to close up. Some of them are now coming back, and we've had some bright, shiny new stores open up lately, and it's there's a big new Apple store that just recently opened. There's a Uniqlo store. There's a lot of stores that are opening, trying to fill that gap. Have they done it completely yet? No. There's more empty spaces than we have new stores so far, but it's not going to happen overnight. But they are making efforts. San Francisco's largest mall, the the San Francisco Center Mall, which is right in the downtown area, only a couple of blocks from where I work, it is closing for good on Monday. The last tenants have been pulling out. The last restaurants were out. And here's this huge mall that used to have 200 retailers in it. That dropped to, I don't know, 20 maybe by 2024 and 25. And now the mall is closing completely. All right, what are we going to do with it? Can it be repurposed for housing? Can another corporation maybe come in and take it over? There was a former mayor once upon a time who wanted to build a soccer stadium on the site of that, which never happened. But, that mall, people were not in downtown San Francisco anymore during the pandemic. And some have come back. People have come back into the downtown area, but it just wasn't enough to let that mall survive, the stores in that mall. Look at the way we shop now. We shop online as much as I can't tell you the last time I was physically in a mall, which I'm, to the point of the San Francisco Center Mall. That explains it. Who goes to the mall anymore? Sure, some young people do, maybe if there's a theater or an anchor restaurant that you really want to go to. But no, with a couple clicks on your phone, your Christmas shopping is done. So, it's been hard. And now the challenge, and the mayor and the board of supervisors here is tasked with trying to find a way to repurpose and fill those spots and bring people back into downtown. So the lunch counters, the coffee shops, the little retail stores, what we used to call a five and dime, those, kind of utility stores where you could pick up just about anything, to try to get those reopened. If the people come back and there is a need for those stores, if there's a need for a donut shop or a coffee shop or, a little retail store of some kind, if there's a need, the need will be met. Somebody will open up. And we are seeing it happening more and more. And it's nice to see. It's big news every time a new store opens up in Union Square, which is the area right near where I work at KCBS. New stores open up, and it's a big deal. We make sure we cover it. And the mayor comes on the radio and talks about we're trying to bring people back into an area that became a desert during the pandemic.
Well, I think the mall situation is like that nationwide.
Yeah.
And actually, when I didn't, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think you're right. Malls are kind of a thing of the past, I believe. There are some malls in the Bay Area here, not right in downtown San Francisco, maybe a little more away from the city center or in the suburbs, that still do extremely well. That are packed with stores, including anchor tenants, including restaurants, things like that. They have parking lots, which is something this San Francisco Center Mall downtown on Market Street did not have. There was a garage, and you could get there on the BART train, but it was hard to drive to it too. And so, yeah, times change. So I think, for the most part, malls aren't what they used to be. Not as many people go to the movie theater as they used to. Now they stream movies, or they watch them on Netflix or whatever. And so movie attendance is down. And a lot of the malls had movie theaters as anchors. And if the attendance goes down, then whoever runs that movie chain, maybe it's Lowe's or whomever, says, you know what, we really don't need this theater in this mall. And so it's kind of an avalanche of occurrences. But yeah, there are some malls maybe outside of city center still do pretty well.
I was gonna ask you, because of all these empty spaces, is San Francisco becoming more affordable? because it
Hmm.
really got really expensive for a while.
That's a really good question. Um, yeah, it's expensive. It is among the most expensive uh, places in the country. New York is still pretty high, and if you go down like into some of the areas around San Jose, really the heart of Silicon Valley, it can be pretty pricey there. Um, the prices went down because, like in other major cities during the pandemic, people fled the cities. They moved out to the suburbs. And so the old law of supply and demand, uh, apartments and condos were trying to get people in. So they lowered the prices. People are coming back now. There are the part of San Francisco where I live is an area called Mission Bay. It's right next door. I live next door to the San Francisco Giants baseball stadium and just down the road from the Warriors arena. And there are a lot of tech startups around here, and these so-called tech bros come in with a lot of money and they're looking for places to live, and they've got an infusion of cash, and so they're willing to pay a little bit more, and so it is starting to bring it back up. You never want to say that higher housing prices are good, but higher housing prices are indicative that something is going right, that the market will bear that. What is the problem is you have the rich ones, and then you have the people at the other end of the spectrum who have nowhere to stay, who cannot afford to live here. And then you have the ever widening chasm of the middle class, where even for the middle class, it can be really hard to live right in San Francisco.
Yeah, because I was talking to somebody here in Chicago and he lived in San Francisco at one point. He said, you don't see like teachers or nurses or people like that in the city. It's hard to find them in the city.
Yeah, in certain parts of town, I think you would find them. Um, but where I live, there are a lot of young, somewhat transient tech people. Um, some of them come in from overseas. Maybe they're on a year-long assignment, so they might live in an apartment for a year and then move on. Or others settle here, but they have the income to do it. There are certainly affordable areas in San Francisco, and they aren't bad areas. They're not crime-ridden areas. Um, they're nice, and so there. I mean, there certainly are people other than the ultra rich who live in San Francisco. But you know what? It's a little bit cheaper if you go right across San Francisco Bay to Oakland or some of the cities in the East Bay over there, and there is a ferry that runs back and forth between San Francisco and Oakland. That it takes like 8 minutes to get across the bay. So if you can find it a little cheaper over there, maybe you go over to the East Bay, or you go up north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Some parts of Marin County are very expensive, but others are much more affordable. But it's an expensive place to live. It's not New York. I don't know how it compares to Chicago. I've been gone from Chicago too long. It's probably more expensive than Chicago because of, as I said, the number of tech people who come in, people who do these startups. They just have a bundle of cash, and they drive up the prices.
But also, you guys have less land than we do.
True.
San
Yeah.
Francisco's not physically big.
No, San Francisco, it's not really, which, to get from one side of town to the other, coming from New York, now Manhattan's an island, so there's not too much you can do to expand there. I mean, you hit water on all sides, but then you go into Brooklyn and Queens and things like that, or over to New Jersey. So it's kind of the same thing here. San Francisco, the city itself, is not real big. It doesn't take that long really to get across town. I mean, I live near kind of the South Beach area, near where the Bay Bridge connects with San Francisco, and to get over to the Golden Gate Bridge really doesn't take you that long, whether you're driving or taking transit or whatever. So no, it's not real big, and because of limitations in space and things like that, it really can't get a whole lot bigger.
Well, I was asking about Oakland too, because it doesn't necessarily have the best reputation for, safety or unless it's changed.
Um, it's I think compared to what the national um, opinion of Oakland might be, it probably has gotten better. Crime in Oakland, when the year end stats came down, crime dropped historically in Oakland, but its perception is reality. You can tell people that crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. But if somebody breaks into your house or your car, or you hear about a murder in Oakland, well, the perception is there's still crime, even though there is less of it. There are some absolutely gorgeous places to live in Oakland, the Oakland Hills and the area right down by Jack London Square at the waterfront has been nicely developed. You know, Oakland is like just about any other metropolitan area. It's got its wonderful parts, and it's got the parts that are facing challenges. But the mayor there, Barbara Lee, is doing what she can to try to improve that. She's been on the job for less than a year, only maybe 6 months or so as mayor, and the crime numbers are coming down. But I know that she fights that perception of what you've heard that Oakland is, and other people have heard what Oakland is, and it's hard to claw back against that. We talked about the image of San Francisco with that one highly publicized murder of Bob Lee. People get that impression in their head, and it's hard for reality to claw back against that. But all everybody can do is do the best they can. I know for our news, when we do the news on KCBS, our radio station, unlike some others across the country, we are not a crime heavy station. It's not if it bleeds, it leads. Our reporters go out and try to tell meaningful stories. If there's a crime story that's really impacting a lot of people, sure, you have to do it. But if it is, I don't know, I don't want to downplay it, but say there's a liquor store robbery somewhere. I mean, we're not going to run out there and have a reporter doing something on that. We try to tell more impactful stories, and we also, try to tell good news stories, because there is good news and kindness out there. And while not ignoring the bad stuff, there's certainly enough bad stuff going on around the country and in the world that it gets mentioned. But it's nice to be able to tell good stories where the reporter finishes the story and you kind of think to yourself, wow, there still are nice people in the world, right?
I'm surprised you guys have times for that, because here it seems like low-hanging fruit are crime stories. So they wouldn't talk about they wouldn't talk about one robbery, but if there's a murder or something, they'll report that. And I was watching the news the other day, it's TV news, and I couldn't believe how many stories were murder oriented or crime oriented. And I'm thinking there are plenty of happy stories. So how do you guys navigate that?
Well, I think it starts at the top with our boss at KCBS. She preaches kindness in the newsroom, and that extends to how we treat people we interview. You can be aggressive and try to get a story and tell the story, but we try to accentuate the positive without ignoring the negative. Like you said, if it's something, if there's a big fire and you can see the smoke from all over the city, or the fire is right next to the freeway, and it's so distracting that people are stopping on the freeway and looking at it. I mean, you have to mention it. We had a fire like that just this past week that was a big apartment fire, and you could see it from the freeway. It was distracting. It displaced a lot of people. It shut down transit in the area for a while. And so yeah, we report that. But other than that, if there's a house fire on a random block somewhere, with apologies to the people who live in that house, or maybe their neighbors on either side, it really doesn't affect the general audience for our radio station that covers such a vast area. There are nicer stories that can be told, and we try to focus on those. There are enough other places, including the TV news, where you can find the murder stories or whatever, the mayhem. You can go to the newspaper. They have crime blotters and things like that. So, we don't ignore it if it is important to the community. If it needs to be told, we'll do it. But San Francisco's murder rate is low enough that quite often, if there is a murder, we are talking about it. We're not going to send a reporter out there to stand in front of a dark house at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, yes, it was inside this house that something happened. But we'll mention it, and it is because the murder rate here is pretty low, especially the murder rate outside of the disadvantaged people who live on the streets. Much of the crime is involves people who have nowhere else to go, and frustration and substance problems and things like that. So, the average tourist walking down the street in San Francisco, while there's no guarantees, you know, you can feel pretty safe. Really, you can. So,
That's great. Okay, so then I've got to go out there again because I mean, my nephew lives out there, and I'm getting images of negative things that people have told me or negative news I've read, but it's just like Chicago. So there you go. I
it's like
mean,
any
the city's not the perception, the bad perception.
yeah, I mean, it's like any major metropolitan area, whether it's Chicago or New York or LA, or in LA, they had demonstrations that remember, the National Guard was sent into LA. The city was out of control, is what we were told. No, I mean, those demonstrations were very well controlled in a space of a few square blocks in the city. The rest of LA was just LA on any other given day. So, there's that perception is reality thing again, where, the TV cameras show up, or the commentators want to talk about it or something like that. It's hard to combat that. It's like, you come to San Francisco. Yeah, if you go to the Tenderloin District at night, you're going to see people on the streets, people who are in states of disarray due to substance or whatever, people who have nowhere else to go. And it might be kind of uncomfortable to see. You might see some drug sales. For the most part, nobody's going to bother you if you're just walking through there. I mean, you may not have a
Yeah.
reason to walk through there. Um, it's much of the crime happens among people who live in that community. It's
Well, what do you think?
stressful. Hmm.
No, I was gonna say, what do you think about the media? Like people's response to the media when they report all this news, and it's sort of it could be, you know, extreme to get eyeballs or ears, and then as a result, sometimes the audience has this perception of the media.
Right. I mean, listen, eyeballs, in radio's case, ears on your product is important. And the TV news, video pops and video sells. And if you have shocking video, and that's probably the chyron they'd put up there, shocking video shows whatever, and then you re-rack it and you play it again, and you put it on a loop and you play it again and again. If it's something really shocking and dramatic, even if it's not the biggest story in the world, but it's shocking, and people look at it and it's like, ooh, ah. I mean, that draws eyes. And so there is pressure to get viewers, there's pressure to get listeners and readers. Um, and so sometimes you have to do what it takes to try to attract people. I'm happy to say that our radio station, which is, it's been all news for more than a half century, does not really have to do that. Maybe it's part of the culture of the listeners here that they don't rely so heavily on that. I can tell you that the two highest rated radio stations in San Francisco are the public radio station and KCBS, both news and information, both cater to an educated, sometimes more affluent audience that maybe looks beyond some of the shocking video and headlines and appreciates other news of the day. There are other cities where the news is more, if it bleeds, it leads, or the television stations are doing that kind of thing. And, it seems to be more attractive there. I don't know. Maybe that says something about, the societal differences between here. I mean, we already talked about earlier, San Francisco's a different kind of more laid back place than New York or Philadelphia or other places like that. And, so maybe the audience is looking for something a little different here. Maybe the audience is in other cities where it is a little more hyped up. Maybe they're looking for more action. I don't know. I guess if I had the answer to that, I'd be a consultant, whatever a consultant is, and, bottle it and make lots of money.
Well, you're talking about, how nice your place is to work. I mean, is it possible to still get work at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I believe we are looking, right now to hire another anchor to add to the stable. So, I mean, they brought me in 14 months ago. We've hired other people since then. There's been some attrition, some people leave, but we've added to the staff. So yeah, I think there are opportunities there. Um, there are opportunities in new journalism too. I mean, radio. Let's face it, is a legacy medium. More people are going into other internet-based or app-based type of journalism, which is great because there's generations of people who may not listen to the radio or watch the TV news, but they do have their phone in their hand. And if you can supply them with good, trustworthy information, that's important. We try to get people, in addition to listening, we have an AM and an FM that both broadcast, KCBS, but we also have the Odyssey app, and we encourage people to listen because we'd love to have younger demographics listening to the radio station, and we know we're more likely to find them, through their device, their phone, perhaps rather than through a good old AM radio.
And I was gonna say also TikTok. I mean, because I know the younger demographics on TikTok. A lot of things blow up on there. That's why I think some people do certain things to get attention because
Yeah.
that's the new algorithm, you know.
Right. Yeah. Somebody does something to get attention, just the way you said, and all of a sudden it blows up. And then that person has 2 million followers, and you're not sure what it is that they do, but they have 2 million followers. And then they become an influencer. But, so maybe they are influencing, but maybe they don't have a journalism background, or they're just saying whatever they want. It doesn't really matter to them if it's factual. And that's how, uh, disinformation and misinformation can start to spread, whether it's intentional or not. Uh, that's how it happens. So,
Now, you mentioned earlier living near these stadiums. How did you get into basketball announcing?
well, yeah, I'm the public address announcer for the Golden State Warriors, and which means I'm the guy who sits there at the scorer's table and I announce the lineup and I announce who made every basket and I say who the fouls are on and I say timeout Warriors or timeout Bulls or whichever team calls the timeout.
And that's
Um,
a dream for a lot of broadcast people.
yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. I did it. I was with the Bulls when I was in Chicago. I was a PA announcer for the Bulls, first at Chicago Stadium and then at the United Center for quite a while. And then when I left Chicago and went to New York, some of the people I had worked with in Chicago were now with the New York Knicks, and so they brought me on there, and I was a PA announcer for the Knicks for a while. And um, I left the Knicks about 10 years ago because I had a lot of things going on and just something had to go, and it was the basketball. And I just had a chance meeting with some executives from the Warriors. I mean, they literally just happened to be visiting the radio station as I walked out of the little kitchen of the radio station after getting a cup of coffee. And I'm walking by. The guy leading the tour stops, introduces me, and just happens to say, "Oh, and Steve used to be a PA announcer for the Bulls and the Knicks." And a guy who's with the Warriors, an executive with the Warriors, says, "Hey, we're looking for a PA announcer," and it just kind of went from there. So
Wow.
I didn't have any intention of necessarily looking to go back in it, but I'm having a good time. I enjoy doing the games. The Warriors are a great group of people to be around, from the ownership on down. And I will say that being a morning news anchor and announcing basketball games at night can make for a tired Steve sometimes. Because you finish a game, say the game starts at 7, it goes about 2.5 hours. I'm usually home within a half hour. So maybe I'm home by 10 o'clock. I get up at 2 to go to work, and you can't always just fall asleep after a game. Your mind is still kind of amped up from everything going on at the game. It takes me a while to fall asleep if I do fall asleep. And so, it can be a quick turnaround, and I'll take a little nap in the afternoons or a nice long nap sometimes, and then catch up on days when there's no basketball games. The Warriors just had 8 home games in 14 days. And so it was basically every other day. And then the last 2 were on back-to-back nights. So I was doing the radio news at KCBS in the morning and then doing the night games and then kind of have a day off and then whoop, right back to it. And then a day off, whoop, right back to it. And then 2 of them back to back. Now I'm happy to say they are on a road trip. And as we have this conversation now, they're away for 10 days. So As much as I love doing it, it was nice to see them go on the road where I can just kind of recharge a little bit.
Well, when you had that chance meeting, I mean, is that the best way to get work? I mean, how's it happen?
To be like a public address announcer for sports.
Yeah, or even just working in the media.
Well, chance meetings are a lot. I mean, for me, that chance meeting led to an introduction of somebody who knew me and knew the guy from the Warriors and put us together. So connections are still really important. Sometimes you have to make your own opportunities though, and reach out and say, hey, I do this, or I'd like to do this. Would you consider adding me maybe as a backup announcer or something like that? Maybe you're not starting with an NBA team or the NFL. You're not starting with the Bears, or you're not starting with the Cubs or the White Sox, but maybe your local high school needs somebody, or a junior college or a college in your area can use somebody, or one of the big universities that has a big sports program, and they already have an established announcer, but maybe they are looking to put somebody on the bench just in case that person gets sick, or they have a family emergency, or they have to go out of town or something like that. It's always good to have a roster. So, you know, uh, you do your homework, and I would say, don't think you're probably not going to start with an NBA team or a Major League Baseball or NFL team or a pro hockey team, but it's kind of like being an athlete. You work your way up. Maybe you start at high school, and then maybe you get a chance in college. Then maybe there's a minor league baseball team, or the NBA has what they call the G League. It's their development league, kind of the minor league for the NBA. Try to hook on there. Just get your name out there. Um, what is difficult sometimes is to try to get a demo, because they say, well, send me something so I know how you sound. It's kind of hard to do. It really is. That's something that's kind of hard to fake. You kind of need to have somebody let you get the foot in the door before you, or do a live audition. When I first started with the Bulls, um, the my audition was doing a game back in 1989-90. I mean, they had met with me and stuff, and they said, okay, we're going to have you announce a game. And that's how they decided to keep me on. Is I guess I did okay. But that's how I started. I didn't have any like audition reel or anything like that. Um, so it's all through connections, and just try to get yourself out there. If you ever get a chance to be an announcer somewhere, and you can set up your iPhone right in front of you to maybe record you announcing the starting lineups for your local high school basketball team. You know, it's not the United Center or the Chase Center where the Warriors play. Maybe it's just a little gym, but people are cheering. And, I would try to be as professional for that high school team as I would be for the Warriors. I mean, they deserve your best effort. Try to record it, and then you've got something. At least listen, whoever's watching and who might be interested in hiring you is going to know it's only a high school game, but at least they can understand, how you sound, what your voice sounds like, your presence and things like that. So, you just have to try to find a way to do it, even if it's a rec league or, pee wee football or little league baseball or high school on up.
Well, how did you go from zero to the Bulls?
Um, I had been, when I was at San Jose State, I did some PA announcing for San Jose State sports. I did their basketball. I did some of their baseball games too. And I was an announcer for the pro soccer team in San Jose, the Earthquakes. I was their PA announcer. And then I ended up actually doing soccer public address announcing for the 1984 Olympics, when the Olympics were out here in California. I was the PA announcer or a PA announcer for soccer. There were several venues that had games. I was one of the PA announcers for soccer. And then when I got to Chicago, I had done some college stuff, and I'm not even sure how I heard about the Bulls, but I reached out, and they met with me, and all I remember is my audition was doing a game. So it was either going to go well or it was not going to go well. And fortunately for me, it went well. I mean, that was the 1989-90 season. And, I took 10 years off after the Knicks, so this is my 27th year as an NBA announcer.
So since you're pretty, I mean, I think you're A-list radio person. So since you're A-list radio person, why do you want to do PA on top of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm getting to be at the age of why am I adding more things to my plate? What am I doing? Um, but it's fun. I do enjoy it. I like watching the basketball games. I'm not a fanatic. I can't quote statistics and things like that, but I like being a part of it. And it's something different from the news that I do every day, but it's still using the skill that I have, and that's my throat, my speaking. Um, so it's why am I doing morning radio and basketball games at night? I mean that's a very fair question because it can be pretty tiring, but I do enjoy it. It's nice to be a part of it. And listen, if I'm 100% honest about it, there's a little bit of ego involved. It's like, oh wow, oh you're that guy. Oh, I've been to Warrior game. Oh, I've heard that's you.
So cool.
Oh wow. I mean, yeah. It's kind of the same on the radio. Oh, yeah, I listen to KCBS. Oh, you're the guy in the morning. Oh, I listen to you. You do a great job. I mean, uh, who doesn't like that? And I think maybe people in our business maybe like it a little more than some other people. We love positive reinforcement. And so, there's that part of me that likes it. I mean, there's been a couple of times, two separate occasions where after the Warriors game ended, before I run out to come home, I stopped in the men's room and twice people have said, "Hey, you're the announcer." One guy's like, "Bro, you're the announcer, dude." I'm like, "I am, yeah, yeah." And I use the restroom just like everybody else. How about that? So, I mean, that was kind of cool, to be recognized like that. Or when somebody finds out I work at KCBS and oh, you in the morning? Yeah, oh, that's you. Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. But listen, I'm in an age where most people are trying to trim back a little bit, right? I mean, I have a lot of contemporaries who have retired or trimmed back to just doing a little bit of stuff. And here I am heaping stuff onto the plate at odd hours of the day and night. But I'm enjoying it for now, and I'd like to keep it. I'd like to keep it going.
Yeah, there are a lot of older people who are very ambitious and they want to be productive and they can technically retire, but they don't want to, so they're crushing it. And
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about age because you keep mentioning your age. Is age a liability professionally?
Hmm. That's a good question. In broadcasting, I don't, well, let me say this. It hasn't worked against me yet. Um, I mean, it was not the reason that I left WCBS. That was the entire station was shut down. My boss here at KCBS, I don't know if she knows exactly how old I am, but she knows how long I've been in the business. Um, it has not been held against me at all here. Um, there are some people older, there are many younger in our newsroom. With the Warriors, I'm sure they probably know about how old I am. Um, it's a business of what have you done for me lately and what can you do for me today. And if you're performing at a level that is acceptable or above, um, I don't know if it matters if you're 20, 30, 40, 60, or 100. If you can do the job, maybe people look past that. If you start to fall down on the job, then maybe people can, I don't know, use that as an excuse. Obviously, you can't be discriminated against directly for your age. Um, so I have not experienced that myself. I know that people I think maybe have, or they've been encouraged to kind of pull back a little bit. Not here, but people I've worked with through the years have been encouraged to maybe, you want to back it off a little bit as far as the workload. Maybe we're going to move you to part time or something like that. Um, it happens. I think it happens in television too, where people are perceived by some bosses and consultants as being too old to be on camera because they're trying to attract a younger demographic, um, which is unfortunate because your most tenured people are probably your most experienced and your most talented. Yet some consultant in a city far, far away says, you look a little too old on camera. So we can't fire you because of your age, but we can find a way to diminish you. I'm fortunate that it has not happened to me. And I hope it won't. I would like to think that if I get to a point where I'm slowing down on the job, whether it's being on the radio or doing the Warriors or whatever else I'm doing, that hopefully I would recognize it before somebody would come to me and say, Steve, you just can't keep up anymore. But for now, I'm that I haven't had that problem. The Warriors brought me on, KCBS brought me on, and so far we're all living happily ever after.
Well, see, one thing that's very evident, talking to you is it really doesn't matter what your age is because you're very sharp, you're very good with descriptions. I'm asking you simple questions, you're going into detail because that's the strength about radio storytellers is you have to be good with words because you can't rely on pictures to tell the story.
Right.
And
And
you're very sharp.
writing,
Plus, you're what?
yeah, writing skills are important too. But yeah, we don't have the luxury of television. In radio we can't say, as you can clearly see in this video. I mean, we don't have that advantage. Um, so communicating skills, if you have them, it doesn't matter how old you are, unless those skills start to diminish due to age or whatever reason. And with the Warriors, it's kind of the same thing. There are certain things that I read, set announcements that I read. Hey, Warriors fans, we have a great selection of eateries here at Chase Center. You can buy a hot dog, whatever. I mean, we have a lot of those things that are scripted, but once the game starts, it's all me watching the game, and I have to see who makes a basket. I have a guy sitting next to me who keeps the official scorebook. He's the official scorer, and he and I work together. We both are calling out, okay, number 4, number 2, okay, number 1 taking a 3-pointer. Okay, he made it. 3 points for number 1, Margaret Larkin. So we work together there. But it's me. I mean, I have to follow along. When there's a foul, the referee is going to say the foul is on number 32, and I have to be able to read that and say, okay, the foul was on number 32, Draymond Green of the Warriors, his first personal foul, second team foul. So I mean, it's all going on in my head, and I think that's why after a game sometimes, because my brain's really firing in every direction during the game, that when I get home, I can't I can't just flip off a switch. Um, it's not caffeine. I'm not drinking coffee during the game. I'm drinking decaffeinated tea. It's just my brain's been firing on so many levels, trying to see things and anticipating and knowing what to say next, because there is no script. I mean, I've got to see who makes the basket. I need to see who the foul is on. If the referee comes over and explains something, I need to then kind of parrot back what they said and tell the crowd. Or I even, if somebody calls a timeout, I have to know if it was this team or that team that called the timeout. So, you're watching pretty closely. So you do have to stay pretty sharp. I'm sitting in a chair for the entire game. So it's not like I'm breaking a sweat or anything like that. It's not physically, tiring, but at the end of the game, it's like, okay, because there's a certain amount of mental stimulation that's going on throughout the game.
Yeah, I was gonna say anything stimulating. What if it's performance or teaching or anything, and you're doing it at night? It's very hard to calm down
Yeah,
right away.
yeah. No, that's true. I mean, they say that even looking at your phone sometimes can get your brain firing. Depending on what you're reading. If you're reading something that is, I don't know, maybe politically opinionated, whether you agree or disagree, your brain can get all fired up. Um, but yeah, it can be kind of hard sometimes, to the point where I can't fall asleep after games. But I get by. I believe that a lot of fatigue is in your head. I mean, there is a point where a body will collapse if you're just exhausted. But short of that, I just try to push through. when the Warriors had this long group of games, and I was doing the morning news and the night basketball, and the morning news, and the night basketball, and the days, days and nights were really short. Um, I'd keep telling myself, okay, I set a target. Okay, Friday, they don't have a game. So when I get off the radio at 10 a.m. on Friday, I can come home, I can take a nap as long as I want. There's no work on Saturday morning. I don't have to get up at 2 in the morning. I can sleep. One night recently, a couple weekends ago, I think I slept for 12 hours straight through one night, which I never do. But, you can start to catch up a little bit. Um, but, I try to just set that target of, okay, Friday at 10 o'clock, when I get off the radio, you made it. You made it until the next hurdle.
Yeah, and I think another thing about being older is not just that you're able to remember everything, but also you have institutional understanding and you've made mistakes along the way that you've rectified, and then you have some kind of background to make better decisions than people who don't have as much experience. Or have you found
Yeah.
that?
I mean, and I've had a lot of practice. I've been doing news on the radio for a long time, going all the way, back into the WLS days, and before that, I worked at other stations in Chicago, and before that, I did the news in San Jose. So, uh, I've had a lot of practice doing that, and so you pick up institutional knowledge, and you pick up tendencies, habits, whatever that help out. And the basketball is the same way. I mean, I had not announced an NBA game for 10 years until I came back with the Warriors this year. I left the Knicks in I think 2015, and or the 2015-16 season, I'm not sure. But 10 years later I came back, and um, thank goodness we had preseason games, 3 preseason games. And then, you still get up to speed, and now we're more than halfway through the season, and now I don't feel like the new guy quite as much anymore. I feel pretty comfortable in there. I've kind of gotten in the rhythm, and when I first started, I hadn't been around the Warriors, so I mean, I had to learn who some of the players were. The visiting team, who some of them are, plus they're all wearing numbers. Well, with the home team, it's nice to just be able to recognize the guy and say, oh, yeah, well, Steph Curry. Everybody knows Stephen Curry. But I mean, other guys who maybe sit at the end of the bench, what's his name? Well, now I know. And so, through the practice of being more than halfway through the season, I'm feeling pretty comfortable now. The next game is still more than a week away as we're having this conversation now, and hopefully I don't forget anything between now and then. But it's just through practice and repetition and feeling more comfortable.
Also, I have a lot of respect for professional athletes. I mean, do you meet the athletes because you're working there?
A little bit. The Warriors have a policy of it's not really a no fraternization policy, but those of us on staff, unless we have a direct need to access a player, we really are not encouraged to go up and just start chatting them up. They have enough people who do that. Now, saying hello, how you doing, how you feeling, that kind of thing, that's great. And many times they will instigate that with me. Maybe a guy is coming over before his pregame warmups to get some rosin on his hands or something so his hands don't slip on the ball, or he'll come over and to grab a piece of gum, and he'll say, hey, how you doing? It's like, doing great, how you feeling? You have a little conversation. But they have enough people tugging on them, that they don't need us doing that. I'll just take it as a win that I get to sit there at the scorer's table at center court, arguably the best seats in the house, and watch these magnificent athletes run up and down the floor and do what they do. The best players in the world get to do that. I mean, I don't really need to chat them up. I mean, the Warriors coach, Steve Kerr, I've been around so long that he used to play for the Bulls, and I used to announce him when I was with the Bulls back in the 1990s. Steve Kerr was on those last 3 championship teams. And I have no idea if he knows. He's smiled at me. He's kind of winked at me, but I mean, we don't carry on conversations. But I would never go up to him and grab him by the sleeve and say, hey, I'm the PA announcer. I don't know if you happen to remember, but back in the 90s, I was at Bulls announcer. I mean, I wouldn't do that. it's just they, like I said, they have enough people tugging on them that they don't need me doing that. So I take it as a win that I get to be there, do something that I enjoy, watch these fantastic players go back and forth from the best seats right there alongside the court, and use a talent that I've developed through the years, and that's announcing the games.
And this is probably my last question, but you mentioned being part of an organization out there, and you were president of the INBA, but why do you think it's important to stay involved in organizations?
Well, I mean, yeah, I was a three-term president of the Illinois News Broadcasters Association. I went to New York, and I was a three-term president of the New York Press Club. I do like to be around people with like interests. I've also always kind of been a little bit of a joiner. I like to join with similar people with similar interests. There is a San Francisco Press Club. I have not joined the San Francisco Press Club to this point. But when I talk about the organization, I mean it more broadly, like the organization of staff at KCBS, from our national bosses, the CEO. I've met her, on down through our local bosses to all the people who work in the newsroom. Top to bottom, it's a good group. And with the Warriors, it's kind of the same way. The owner of the Warriors and also the Valkyries, the WNBA team, Joe Lacob, has a great reputation of really treating his people well in his private business and also with the Warriors, and that filters down to the people who I report to. It's a very friendly, respectful group of people, and it's kind of nice. If something needs to be corrected, the way it's approached is not through a "you screwed up" or an angry finger wagging. It's like, hey, let's look and see if there's a different way that we can do this, or it's a gentle but effective way of saying maybe we can do it a different way. And so it makes it a pleasure to go to work at KCBS, and to go to Warriors games too, because not every team is like that. Maybe it's a reflection of the city. I love being with the Bulls. I like being with the Knicks a lot too, but New York is a lot different city than San Francisco. And I think the people with whom I work here, who in San Francisco with the Warriors, who are just lovely, lovely people. There were nice people in New York too, but it's just it's a different environment. It's a little harder type of environment there. So it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying both doing the basketball, and then of course my main day job is doing the news on KCBS every
Yeah, I
morning.
was gonna, yeah, I was gonna ask you because you said it's different out there. And of course New York is like the center of media and a center of a lot of things. But when people join these organizations, will they only talk to you to gain something, or are they just like super like hanging out? Because I know INBA doesn't seem mercenary in that respect.
No, I
Like in New York, was it like that? I mean,
no, I don't think so. You mean like hangers on type?
no, I mean like when you join these press organizations or whatever, are people only doing it to network? Like I know parts of our LA are like that.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're saying. I mean that's one of the reasons why I like to get involved is meeting people. I mean, I joined INBA. I mean, it's been over 30 years ago when I first joined INBA, and I still have friends who were a part of INBA back then who are still friends today. People who I've counted on as friends for decades, and people with the New York Press Club. I still stay in touch with, some of them as well. So part of it is me maybe looking for that professional family, people with like interests. So I've never really experienced anybody just looking to make connections. But let's face it. I mean, that's why you join a professional organization, isn't it? Is to make connections. Maybe you're at an INBA convention and you meet somebody from a city you'd love to work in someday. Maybe it's a news director at a TV station or something like that. And you chat them up for a few minutes. Well, now they've got your face and you've got their face. And maybe if you want to go to that city someday, you can drop them an email and they'll actually recognize the name or something. So, yeah, I mean, that's why we do it. So, there's a certain amount of networking there. I mean, I worked at WLS when I started in INBA in the early 1990s. And so for me, it wasn't really going to be about job hopping or anything like that. It was being around people from around the state that did what I did and understood what a news person does and the day-to-day struggles and the trials and tribulations and the joy and the victories and all that stuff of doing it. And I quickly found that it doesn't matter if you're working in Carbondale or Peoria or Springfield or Rockford or the Quad Cities or wherever. In Chicago, I was doing the exact same thing. When it comes down to it, it's one person and one microphone telling one story, right? And I really liked being around people that do that. And if somebody being around me, if something that I could do would soak off on them and it would help them at some point, or if they could use me as a reference later on, which people have done, and I happily try to help. Well, then that's good. I mean, that's the whole reason why you join a professional organization, I think, is for networking and, just maybe it is for career advancement, but more than anything else, let's face it, news people, we're an interesting bunch. We're not like a lot of a lot of other folks. And so sometimes, birds of a feather like to flock together, and we're some odd birds sometimes, but it's, sometimes we like to just be together and commiserate in a way that other people will understand.
Okay, so how do you think news people are different than other people or interesting, as you said?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I think in many cases we take our jobs home with us. Sometimes. I mean, I'm not a news director anymore. Um, but I am the morning anchor, and I'm already thinking about on Monday. Who could be an interesting interview that we could do, or something like that. I wonder sometimes if we are much more invested in what we do, maybe because we're out there so publicly, whether you're on the radio or you're on TV, but we're really invested in it more than somebody who has a job that is not quite so public with the masses seeing you or hearing you or whatever. Um, we keep strange hours. We hop around from city to city a lot. Um, Lucky are the fortunate few who get to start in one city and they work their entire career there and retire there someday. We have a tendency maybe to move around a lot. We're kind of geeky, on news stuff. We know who the mayor of Oakland is, but we also know who the supreme leader of Iran is. I mean, where people like to have us on their Trivial Pursuit team sometimes because we know a lot of meaningless trivia. So I think it's just I don't know. We like to be around our like selves a lot. I don't know. Do accountants hang out with other accountants? Maybe they do. Do teachers hang out with other teachers? Maybe they do, and they complain about their classrooms and how they can make their classrooms better and things like that. But I've always found the personalities, because in journalism you have a lot of big personalities, especially in broadcast where people see and hear you, but also in print. If you become a famous print writer or columnist or something like that, or now a blogger or somebody that has a podcast or something like that where millions of people see you, it kind of feeds the ego. And I guess maybe we like to be around other people who are kind of the same way.
And by the way, you mentioned hanging out with journalists in San Francisco, and it reminds me of Bohemian Grove because
Oh,
when it was established, it used to be for, San Francisco area journalists, etc.
yeah. Bohemian Grove. Never been there. Heard the name. Does it still
Okay.
exist?
Yes, yes.
Does it?
It's sort of
Okay.
infamous. I've seen some videos of people who snuck in. It was pretty, I don't know. Let's just say, just Google it, everybody, and you'll see what I mean. But
Yeah, I
all
have to
right.
say that because of the hours I work and the two jobs that I am doing these days, let's just say I don't get out a lot. So have to work on that.